Core Volunteer Training is a program created to help our supporters, especially newer volunteers, to connect around their larger goals for climate advocacy, to help them achieve their larger goals for the climate. This week's topic, drum roll please, is Grassroots Outreach Basics. And I'm your host, as I said, Tamara Staton. I am CCL's Education and Engagement Coordinator. I get to introduce our speaker. I'm going to be one of your speakers this evening, but Dave's going to be the other speaker. So Dave has been an active CCL volunteer since 2014. He's been involved with both presenting and scheduling. He specializes in mentoring new CCL volunteers who have joined and enjoys helping them come up to speed and fly on as their own presenters. Dave has founded a company that provided greenhouse gas accounting solutions and environmental pollution analyses to major corporations to help meet the Clean Air Act. He has a PhD in electrical engineering from the University of Washington. So if we've done our job this evening, you will walk away with the understanding of these three main goals. Number one, to be prepared to think about how to do outreach in order to represent your CCL group or chapter. To be prepared to think about how to use CCL's introductory slide deck for your own presentation and understand the scheduling process, and to know where to find resources on CCL Community to get started. I want to mention, or review, I should say, CCL's 5 levers of political will. And these are the tools that we use as individuals and as chapters to increase the political will for a livable world. Political will being like political cover for politicians so that they can come out and take action on the things that are important to those of us in their districts. So while other trainings in Core Volunteer Training series address the other 4 levers, tonight's focus is specifically on grassroots outreach. And the actions associated with these levers help move people and officials towards an understanding of fee and dividend and encourage them to be active participants in making change happen. So this lever of grassroots outreach focuses on the general public in our communities out there, right? Through this outreach, we build support for climate action and carbon pricing, and we make ourselves and our work known in our communities. We find new members and we build relationships in the places where we live. We invite and educate the public on climate solutions, citizen advocacy, and how to participate with one's government. We value service as a way to empower our volunteers and build important connections within our community. So opportunities with grassroots outreach include many, but a few of them are serving in community organizations. That's part of the service aspect of grassroots outreach. Seems sort of strange that we would be telling you, go serve other organizations. We don't want you to leave CCL. We just want you to also serve other organizations as a part of grassroots outreach. Tabling at local events, that bottom right corner, you can see some fun, looks like a wheel of fun right there, right? That's another opportunity, is tabling, which we're going to be talking about this evening. Organizing events and online presentations, which is what Dave is going to be talking about this evening, and enrolling in our monthly calling campaign. So let me mention COVID before we get too deep into this, because if you have been around for a bit in CCL, and even if you haven't, you know that COVID has been drastically changing our lives. Well, the exciting news is that we are slowly opening things up around the country. The CDC has updated their guidelines, and the big takeaway is get vaccinated. I will quote the Center for Disease Control and Prevention. Quote, if you are fully vaccinated, you can resume activities that you did prior to the pandemic. New studies have also been found that being fully vaccinated provides excellent protection from all variants of the COVID-19 virus. So to protect yourself and your community, we strongly encourage you to get vaccinated. Please do continue to follow your state and local guidelines regarding gatherings, masks, and social distancing. We trust you to make the best judgment for you and for your chapter around in-person meetings, tabling events, and or presentations. Please note that we do plan on holding our November conference in person in Washington, D.C., and we ask that you get vaccinated so that you can attend and be with your fellow CCLs in our natural habitat in person with one another. So we're going to talk about tabling. Tabling is a social fun activity with measurable results. So let's dive into the basics of what, why, when, and where CCL volunteers have historically chosen to table. So different organizations table for a variety of reasons: to sell something, to raise money, to educate, to engage. Why does CCL table? Well, the power of CCL is that we are sharing an idea. To people concerned about climate change, we are sharing the gift of hope. So let me ask you this. Why do you think we table? What are some reasons? Imagine that you had the opportunity to step up and set up a table for CCL. Maybe you're a group leader, maybe you're an action team lead, maybe you're super new to CCL and you just love this organization and love what it opens up for people, and you want to help CCL achieve its goals. What are your ideas around why we might table? Tabling is a wonderful way to educate other people, not only about the Energy Innovation Act, but also about the empowerment you feel with being engaged. The sense that you can replace hopelessness with hope and tell people about what we are accomplishing. Like I said, we are sharing an idea with CCL, right? We're not just here to tell people about the climate science. We are sharing hope. So another reason that we table is to encourage people to take action. We're all about action here, right? Not everyone at a tabling event wants to join CCL on the spot, but we know from the Yale climate data that a huge majority of folks believe that we need to take action. So we give them something to do in that very moment. We can encourage them to fill out a constituent comment form and let them know that we will hand deliver this to their member of Congress. A lot of these folks, you may never see them again. You can let them take action and feel good walking away about accomplishing something. And just so you're aware, we've updated the constituent comment forms to be energy innovation specific. And I will talk about where to find those in just a bit. So tabling events are also a good place to get new volunteers. One of you said that in the chat. So you want to make sure you have a sign-up sheet and encourage them to put their name and email and zip code legibly, right? And we'll go over that too. And then tabling is also a really low-risk, non-threatening way to involve new volunteers for practice and to learn their communication skills. Let me know in the chat if you have ever tabled. I'm curious if anybody here has had an opportunity to be at a table. Granted, it's been a long year and a half, right? But maybe you did some online tabling, right? So I want to just mention also that tabling is so much more than a once-a-year Earth Day. Though it is true that we often table at an issue-oriented event like Earth Day, there are lots of other possibilities. Here's a list just for starters, but there are many, many more and that are unique to your own group and community. So we've got farmers markets and cultural festivals and partner group events and movie nights and educational conferences and public hearings. So many options. We really encourage all groups to expand outside of their comfort zones and start brainstorming this year on where would be the best place to do tabling. People are so excited to be outside. We have the Cathedral Park Jazz Festival down the street, literally 2 blocks from our house. There have never been so many cars, like we couldn't park in front of our house, and we are 2 to 4 blocks away. And the whole neighborhood was so packed. People are ready to be outside and in person with each other. So this is the year. It's going to be a great opportunity to do some tabling. So let's talk about what's involved in tabling, and most specifically in getting yourselves ready for the event. First of all, you want to get permission. Amy, I jumped a couple, so I'm on slide 19, I think. Most community locations and events require prior permission or registration, and sometimes there's a fee, which is sometimes negotiable. You can play the nonprofit card, so to speak, and they might reduce the price or waive the fee. You want to get the size and dimensions of your booth, and yes, make sure they have tables and chairs available, because it's really awful to arrive at an event only discover that that's not provided and you don't have a table or chairs or any sun or rain shelter. If you're bringing a laptop so that people can do online actions, you might need power. So find out if those things are available before the event. We also want to make sure that we are protecting our data. So you want to make sure that you connect with the IT team to get set up with what's called Tunnel Bear VPN. whenever you use Wi-Fi in public areas. And Garrett Pinnell on the IT team can help you with that. And his email address I'm dropping in the chat, Garrett with 2 R's and 2 T's at citizensclimatelobby.org. Before tabling, delegate responsibilities. For example, you might have a tabling coordinator for your chapter that is in charge of events like this. You should also make someone responsible for setting up and someone else responsible for tearing down and cleanup. You'll also want to make sure you have enough coverage at your table. It's a good idea to have folks work in pairs and have shifts that aren't more than 2 hours. So obviously you want to pair a new person with an inexperienced person if you have that dynamic happening at your event or in your chapter. But most importantly, you really want to designate someone on your team to do the follow-up, because that's really where the magic happens in a sense, right? You'll have a lot of people who sign your sign-up sheet and they're all excited at the event, but then without that follow-up phone call or email, optimally a phone call, they're going to forget how excited they were. Okay, so your ability to convert people to CCL volunteers is greatly enhanced if you can follow up within 24 to 48 hours. So because at that point, they still remember that they signed up for the sheet, and they will very likely remember the name of the organization that they signed up with. So make sure someone's all set to handle the information that you collect, and we'll say more about this later. So before we get to some questions about tabling and then pass the mic to Dave, let me show you where to find some of our great tabling resources on CCL Community. So here's another interactive question for you all. How many of you have ever been to the resources section on Community? At the top of Community, it says training and resources, and then you click on the training and resources tab, and over on the right-hand side, it says resources. Well, in the middle, actually, it says resources. On the right, it says tools. How many of you have ever been there? Looks like William has, nope, that's different. I'm looking. Okay, William has. Okay, William is also tabled. That is awesome. Vivian, okay, great. Linda, yes, Linda, of course you have Linda. Okay, so just out of curiosity, bonus points, but nothing wrong if you have yet to be there, because that's what you're here for, right? We currently have a one-stop shop for all of our resources, and they are quite easy to find by topic. In this case, Grassroots Outreach, you guessed it. At the top of every page in Community, you will see a tab called, like I said, Resources and Training. You click on that, and towards the right, there will be a drop-down menu with all resources. It actually says all resources at the top. Click on that, and you will be taken to our resources page, which looks like this at the top. These are the things that you'll print, refer to, and share for your next activity. If you scroll down, you'll come to an area with various topics with drop-down arrows, as you see here with the Grassroots Outreach. Next to the Grassroots Outreach, there's that little carrot. And then you can find all the resources that you'll need. We may be doing a redesign soon, but the resources will still be here, as well as connected to the training. So you can look forward to that in the next few months here. So there are a number of things that you want to be sure to take with you to your event. You definitely want a sign-up sheet, which we've talked about. You'll also want to have the Energy Innovation Fact Sheet. People get curious when you're talking to them about legislation. It is also really nice for people to be able to look at something when they're having a conversation with you, because it takes some of the intimidation factor out of people needing to make eye contact the whole time. So if nothing else, it's really good for that. You want to have a clipboard. It makes it easier for people to write on, especially if the table gets kind of crowded. You want to have pens and pencils, name tags for your team, information session flyers, and have an action to take that we talked about that lets them walk away having had a positive experience at your table, other than meeting your smiling face, of course. So you will be surprised by the number of people who will write a letter if you ask, especially if you offer them chocolate, but we'll get to that in a minute. So as we just discussed, these flyers, fact sheets, and handouts are all available on Community. So yeah, this is basically just a list, an additional list of what I was just talking about. And let's talk about tabling bells and whistles. So there are a few things that can really make your tabling experience that much better. Having a tablecloth, see that black tablecloth in the picture, very, very nice. Having a banner that sets you apart from the other tables. It also makes us look very professional, and people like to be connected with professional organizations. Dividend checks can be fun to help people understand what is this fee and dividend thing that you're talking about. And those are all available online again, and I will just drop that link into the chat for you because that might be fun for you to check out. Another key resource I'd like to point out while we're talking about it is the Energy Innovation Act, Handling Challenging Questions. This is a really great document, not only for yourself to learn about, but for other people to understand some of the nuances of the bill that we advocate for, the Energy Innovation and Carbon Dividend Act, HR 2307. So you can either share that or you can reference it. And remember, while I'm talking about this, you don't have to know everything. It's not like you need to memorize the Handling Challenging Resources document before you go table. If somebody asks you a question that you don't know the answer to, my favorite answer is, oh, that's a great question. We have so many people in CCL that know a lot more than I do, and I would love to be able to get back to you on that. Can I write your name and phone number down so I can call you? It's the perfect second touch point. So I always hope that they ask me a question that I don't know. The last key resource I'm going to talk about is our paperless grassroots outreach. All of our paperless grassroots outreach can be found in one place, which makes it very easy for you and other active and potential volunteers to take action. And you will see those QR codes, which is a very fancy. So we have one for Write Congress, Call Congress, Tweet Congress, and sign up for the monthly calling campaign or the monthly reminder. So let's talk about some tips for making tabling awesome. So one of our group leaders said this about tabling: I love tabling because sharing solutions is giving a gift of hope, a key to action, and as a path to a global solution. It is pretty cool when you think about it like that. I remember my first tabling experience. I was pretty intimidated. I didn't want people to ask me things that I didn't know, right? But the more you do it, the more comfortable you get. So we really want to connect on a personal level. Somebody in the chat said something that was so insightful. I'm trying to scroll up to find it, but it was dynamic and responsive conversations. Caroline, that's what we're looking for, right? We want interaction, just like I try for engagement on these two-dimensional Zoom experiences, right? But live, you get three-dimensional, and then you want to add some dynamism to that, to your experience. So stand up. You want to get out in front of the table. A lot of people who are tabling, and in fact, when you go to a tabling event, a lot of other tablists, it's probably not what you call them, but that's my new word for the night, tablists, they will stand behind their tables and they will wait for you to come. But CCL, we can get out in front of the table. I always stand sort of on the edge, and I have a clipboard, and I often have a bowl of M&Ms. Actually, I keep the M&Ms on the table so that they have to go in there when I say, hey, you want some chocolate? So you want to be interested in them, not interesting. All right. So it's all about showing curiosity for the people who are there. They will feel that. They will feel that curiosity on your part and that interest in them, and they will like you and they will like us, and it will cause them to come back to the organization. Okay. And at the same time, you want to find your comfort zone. If that being out in front of the table is too much for you, have somebody else from your table be the one that's out front, and you can be the one who's sort of safe behind the table, showing them the various resources and things like that. You want to speak conversationally, again, not like laser talk style where you're just reading stuff from a paper. Just have a conversation with these people, and you want to focus on solutions once you get to that point, right? I mean, the first words out of your mouth, you don't want them to be solution oriented, but we'll get there. And you want to make it a positive experience. We're not there to spread the gloom and doom, because I promise people will not come back if you start talking to them right off the bat, or even possibly at all, about the gloom and doom. So we have some good opening lines. There are lots of them. In fact, if you have any good opening lines from your experience tabling, please share them in the chat. But here's some that we have heard from various people. We've got a solution to manage emissions and address climate change. It's fair, efficient, and politically viable. Would you like to hear more about it? That one works. In my opinion, it's a little bit too wordy. I might cut it down a bit. Even something like, we've got a solution to address climate change. Would you like to hear more about it? Super simple, right? You want people to be able to process these words really quickly. This one comes from Joyce Waterhouse. And what she said is, as folks walk by the table, I approach them and say, either, are you concerned about climate change? In just 1 minute, you can do something about it. And the last part is usually what stopped them, she says. So then when they stop, you can tell them about filling out the card for their representative. And once they start writing the card or talking with you, then you can mention, quote, by checking that box at the bottom of the form, you could do something that's even more important. And that is to sign up for the email list, and you'll get an email every week telling you about all the positive, empowering things that are happening around the world to fight global warming and the little things you can do to help. So she sort of hooks them, right, with her fishing pole, gets them in to do something super simple so as not to overwhelm them. And then once they're there, she takes them down the path a little bit further. One final recommendation from our Texas groups that like incentives. They say, take a moment to write your member of Congress about your comments about climate change and solutions that exist. We'll throw in a cookie and promise to hand deliver your letter for you. I have also found at tabling that I just will often say, do you want some chocolate? Sometimes it's on the table, sometimes it's right in my hand. Most people feel very, very guilty taking the chocolate and walking away. Most people totally understand that in our culture, there's no free lunch. So you give them chocolate and they will stay and listen to you. At least they're half listening. So that's one of my favorite things because I love chocolate and I like to share that with other people. Let's talk about some example conversation here. We talked about the opening. And so once you get to the opening and you got to make sure you got to hook them with something, right? Whether that's, are you concerned about climate change? Do you want some chocolate? Are you having a good day here? Anything, any super simple question that gets them to engage, right? And then you can introduce yourself. Hey, my name's Tamara. I work with CCL, or I've been a volunteer for 4 years, or this is my first time tabling, which would probably be a great thing to say because that will show that you're vulnerable and they'll probably love that. You can then say, hey, what brought you here today? Or you could say, we've got a fair and bipartisan solution to address climate change. You want to hear more about it? Is another opening. Or another possible opening, do you have time to take a moment to express your concern about climate change to Congress? So then you let them respond. This is the most important part. You ask them a simple question and you wait for their response. And then that's where the conversation starts, right? You acknowledge what they said, like, oh yeah, that makes total sense to me. I have a concern about that too. Or you ask an open-ended question then, because that will keep the conversation going. If you know what open-ended questions start with, drop that in the chat. What do open-ended questions start with? What 5 or 6 words do open-ended questions start with? It might be something like, how concerned are you about climate change, right? The W's, exactly, who, what, where, why, when, and the H, how, okay? We do tend to try to avoid the why questions. I mean, I think an opening why question would be okay, right? Why are you concerned about climate change? I might say, what has you so concerned about climate change? But then you ask an open-ended question and then you listen. Acknowledge what they said. You ask for permission to proceed. Hey, that's an interesting point and something we're concerned about as well. Would you like to hear what we're doing about it? What we're working on? You might say a few sentences about the Energy Innovation Act, key being a few sentences, right? You don't want to do a whole soliloquy, sharehold laser talk for 2 minutes because there, I promise they will probably get bored. Not all of them, but some of them. And then you close, you offer an action. Would you like to join us for the informational session next Wednesday? Or would you like to write a postcard to a member of Congress and we'll deliver for you? Would you like to come into my tent and have some chocolate, right? So again, telling people about carbon fee and dividend is like giving them a gift. I often feel so grateful that I work for and have volunteered with CCL because we have a solution that we're working towards, right? Like even if it doesn't work, I get to spend my life working towards something that I believe has the potential to be effective. There are a lot of people that don't have that. And I want to give them that, right? We want people to have that. So that's what I think about when I'm tabling. There are lots of fun activities to do at tabling. It's a really, really great way to engage the community. Climate selfies, like you see on the left, right? They've got the hashtags, and then people are so into social media these days, and you can create a great opportunity for them to take a photo using their phone, and then they can post it. You can do a Dear Congress on a whiteboard, like that middle photo, price carbon because Mother Earth is priceless. and they get to add their own message in green, and then you take a picture of them with their own phone, right? And then we have in Portland that right blue photo, but you can see like how fun is that? And people love coming, and kids love coming to that, adults love coming to that. So you can make something like that if you have an artist in your group. You can also do cookies for comments, coloring for kids, anything to make things more creative. You can do like a spin the wheel kind of.
To begin with, I start out just like many of you, I started tabling. And that was a conversation between myself and another person. What we're going to be talking about on presenting is talking to one to many. But actually, if you stop to think about it, if you're at a table and you're talking to one person and somebody's standing right next to him, you have an audience. And what I want to share with you a couple of things that Tamara said that was also true of presenting. First of all, presenting is connecting on a personal level. One to many, but it's amazing. You're not giving us a lecture. You're not giving a climate presentation. You're connecting with a group of people. And once that connection is made, it's something magic. And the second thing is, as presenters today, with all the gloom and doom, we have an opportunity, as Tamara said, to give the gift of hope. And that part of hope is what people yearn for. They really do. There's so many people concerned about what's going to happen, even if it isn't in the words of climate change, but all the severe weather and all of it. So we've really reached a threshold. It's almost like a tipping point of people who are now wanting to do something about climate change. But first, before we get started, I'm going to challenge you. We're going to run a poll. And I know a number of you haven't actually given presentations before now, but as we're going to find out, you all have something to bring to the audience. So Tamara, if you would run the poll, this is the questions you're going to be asked. So I'm really happy that it turned out this way. We have a pretty wise group of participants. And indeed, telling a story is the heart and soul of connecting to the audience on climate, because really the essence of giving a good presentation and also in tabling is that personal connection, meeting people where they are. So if we can quit the poll, let's see where this takes, because I'm going to come back to this. Remember, telling a story, because this is an opportunity for us to do a little bit of. So the question I really have to you, storytelling aside, can you be a gifted climate presenter? And I'm here to say that every one of you can be. The answer is yes. The reason is partly because of what I was talking about before. It's no longer creating climate awareness or doing something about global warming. We've reached and passed the tipping point where people want to get a sense of hope, a sense of possibility. Something that Tamara mentioned, a solution. Think of that. How often have people been presented or even have a chance to engage, not only with another person, but with a group talking about hope and possibility? And that's our strength, because we can deliver that in spades. By combining the gift of hope in a story, in a narrative, you can be a great presenter, a gifted presenter. Even though it may seem at first, just like when you step up at the first table, that you're outside of your comfort zone. As Ellie Sparks has said, and she's famous for this, when you're outside your comfort zone, either at a table or standing in front of the audience, that's where the magic happens. So, question is, the challenge. The challenge here is that it's no longer informing and educating people about climate change. You just have to look outside. The severe weather effects here in California with all the fires, the drought in the West, the severe storms across the East, the flooding. Everybody knows. Everybody is concerned about the climate change. So for us, this is the sweet spot. This is the time. The challenge for us is motivation. It's not education. And by bringing the gift of hope and some other things I'm going to talk about, you can put together a presentation that you can really stand on. I mentioned something about a narrative. So a story, we'll be talking about that, is the idea that there's a beginning, there's a engagement, increasing engagement, so that you have your audience sort of up on a climb, an ascent, and you reach a tipping point, a peak. And then, of course, once you've got them, and what I say when you've got them is you have mind share with the audience, that they're leaning forward, they're interested in this story, they're intrigued, they're looking to possibility, then can move to actually motivate them to take some action. Not only take some action, but take some action by joining with us. So crafting a personal narrative is the skeleton of the story. Meeting people where they are. In this case, it helps to know a little bit about the group of people that you're dealing with. It could be a Rotary Club, it could be a church club. Just take about Rotary Club is, of course, already climate friendly. A church club has a more spiritual context. And if you dig deep down, there's a spiritual element that you can bring forward in your presentation. I mentioned hope, and the whole thing that a kindling hope and possibility is our competitive advantage. With all the media, with all the dissenters, with all the gnashing of teeth and everything else, is something that just engages people. And you have a doable call of action, something they can do, something that meets them where they are, okay? What could that be? Writing a letter to a member of Congress. Of course, as Tamara mentioned, that's something that can be done at the table. Of course, we have a really neat application. They can get people to join the monthly calling campaign, or maybe even an endorsement if it happens to be a business leader. As I said, narratives move people. It's been shown from the time humans were humans that you tell a great story, a great yarn, you're going to get them. And when you get them, that's the time to move into motivation. And you can almost tell by the questions they raise, the body language, you can see it on Zoom, you know you have them. And by the way, when you've got them, it's a wonderful feeling. It is absolutely wonderful. Because it's infectious. Most people, we're social creatures. And so we are motivated by the people around us. And so you can use the audience to amplify everything you say. So as I mentioned before, we tend to look at a narrative as talking about the problem, but in a hopeful way. Most people are aware of climate change. We don't have to go into the mechanics of global warming, but they are influenced by polls, by attitudes, things that you can bring to buttress the fact that there's a gradual but very significant move towards accepting the reality of climate change without even having to demand it. All the polls show it, right? Even conservatives have moved substantially. And so I talk about the fact that there's a condition of acceptance, and your story is a story of acceptance. Why are you here at this meeting today? How did you get concerned about climate change? Even though it may not be interesting to you, it'll be interesting to your audience, I guarantee you. And so the purpose then is to bring the level of emotion up by engaging them emotionally, not rationally, because people are not rational about climate change. And when you have brung them along, you're in a point of being able to talk about a solution, right? We call it agency. And that's usually what happens during the Q&A. You engage people in something that the group can get involved in. We're going to do some of that. I'm going to be involved in an exercise with you in a minute on agency for part of this, where you're actually involved as a group. So they are investing with you. Okay. Acceptance, as I mentioned, all the polls, hope, action, and agency. Those are the three elements of a really effective presentation that you all can give. We call it the AHA narrative. And we used to, and we still do, give PowerPoint presentations that are step-by-step. And so I'm not suggesting that this is the only way we can give effective presentations, but more and more people resonate on a personal level, and they resonate on hope. There's a source for this, actually several sources, because this is actually a scientific approach to motivating people. And there's numerous studies that, for instance, a study on the white by Sabine Marks, who's been a prominent speaker in a couple of our national calls. There's a couple of sociologists, Anne Cristiano and Annie Neiman, science of what makes people care. And so if you're all interested in that, there's a great deal of work that's been done about how to influence and motivate people. And that's our business, because we want them to join with us. And there's a starter kit. There's no standard set of slides. You can't just drop a set of slides in, because an effective motivational presentation needs to be your story, your personality, your approach to meet the audience where they are. So this is a starter kit, and there is actually a bit of a presentation, but the rationale and logic and the know-how is included in this. And I'll try to drop that into the chat. Remind me to do this. Okay, we're at the breakout point. So, and as I mentioned, agency is part of this. So exercise that we're going to go through is tell other people your climate story. Just in brief, what brought you here to this particular webinar? How did you get here? And just share that for a few minutes with someone else. That is the kernel on which you will build your presentation. So if we go to breakout rooms, I'd be very interested in what you think of that experience. The other things that I think I want to share with you, let's see if I can get the slides to move, is the fact that you're not a lone presenter. And this is a concept called team presenting, when you have someone that's working with you, because as a presenter, all you want to do is get in front of people. But a scheduler is somebody that works to get the speaking opportunities. And in fact, you can switch around. And in fact, you can build a whole chapter around a presenting team. And that is fun, because you can spin up and learn so much. So I'm going to talk to you about the scheduler opportunity really quickly, because we don't have much. Scheduling steps, there's 6 steps. We have a scheduling tool that you can download to keep a spreadsheet, but the things is basically get a survey of all the organizations like Rotary clubs, church clubs, garden clubs, book clubs, it goes on and on. Find the contact information, email a proposal, call to follow up, that person-to-person connection where you can make that connection with a leader of a group. And when you do, and you talk to them on the phone, you've got them. Most times you'll run into the presentation. Go to the show as a scheduler, go with your presenter and actually log your action. So I'm going to just click through this, but in our area, first of all, just ask in your chapter, what community organizations do you belong to? Civic organizations, chambers of commerce, there's just many, and you'll get your first leads. We have a scheduler's toolkit that you can download, put it on a Google Drive, and build your team around it. Find that contact information. Sometimes you can Google it. Very often you can pull the contact information right off their website. While you're there, you can find out what the culture of that organization is, so you can shape your presentation differently in the case of a conservative organization like a Democratic club, or like a Chamber of Commerce, a Republican club, or if it was an environmental club. Make a proposal, an email proposal, Short and sweet. We have a number of templates you can use, oriented, but how the organization and the group that you're being addressed is going to benefit. Call to follow up. As I mentioned, that's absolutely critical. It's a real opportunity to get engaged with somebody in the leadership organization that can be your guide, because if they say yes, then they want you to be successful. They can guide you into becoming a successful presenter for that particular group or category of group. And then go to the show. And that's so much fun because the scheduler and you see the audience interact, whether it's a virtual presentation or otherwise, in real time. And you can coach each other. You log your action. I was going to run a quick poll about Grassroots Presenting to be greatest thing since sliced bread. These are all of the reasons why you benefit becoming a presenter. You really can. It's a tremendous engine for your own personal growth as a climate advocate and as a person. Where to find resources, the Presenters and Schedulers Action Team, which I co-lead. You can track that down going on the CCL community. It's a Grand Central Station. There's all kinds of shared decks and drop-in slides and other tools I mentioned that I was talking about. We also have a monthly office hours. So if you're thinking about getting started, you want to spend an hour with the experts, you check it out. There'll be an event. I think the next one's on August 5th, and that'll be on our calendar at the Presenters and Schedulers Action. Just love to have you drop in. So here's how you connect into the action team on the CCL community action teams, bookmark it. You'll find our action team over here because we are all about building skill building and support. And right on the dot.
Thank you guys for coming tonight. And thank you for being here tonight, everybody. Wonderful to see you. Have a great night. Goodbye.
Thank you for listening to this episode of Citizens Climate Lobby's training program. You can tune into more episodes anywhere podcasts are available. Inspired by what you heard today? Join Citizens Climate Lobby to advocate for bipartisan climate solutions. Go to community.citizensclimate.org to find more trainings, resources, your local chapter, national action teams, discussion forums, and more. Be sure to like our Facebook page and follow us on Twitter and Instagram @CitizensClimate. We also invite all of our listeners to subscribe to our YouTube channel for more inspiration. And together, we are creating the political will for a livable world.